No, you're gonna do a great job, buddy.
Thanks. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That is a podcast that explores itself, explores ourselves, and explores the self in general. My name is Ty. I am one of your co-hosts.
And I am the fictitious twin brother of your other co-host, Distance.
And tonight is the Metacast movie show about adaptation. That's the wrong scene. There it is. Adaptation is a 2002 dramedy. It is directed by Spike Jonze with a screenplay by Charlie Kaufman and Donald Kaufman, based on The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean.
It stars Nicolas Cage, Meryl Streep, Chris Cooper, and Tilda Swinton.
With a budget of $19 million, this had a box office take of around $32.8 million.
With a tomato meter rating of 91% and an audience score of 85%.
While technically based on The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean, Adaptation really centers around Charlie Kaufman struggling to adapt the book into a film. Honestly, I feel that this movie is at its best when you go in pretty much blind. So if you haven't seen it yet, I really don't want to tell you a lot more as far as plot-wise than what I've already said. What I will say is I love this movie. I think it's smart. I think it's funny. I think it is incredibly well acted. And as I just said, I think that it gives you a lot to think about. I've realized that I am actually a Charlie Kaufman fan. I did not realize until revisiting this movie that Charlie Kaufman's the same guy that wrote Eternal Sunshine, and of course being John Malkovich, as there are like scenes in the background of this movie. And then also, yep. I'm thinking of Ending Things. I kind of forgot that was Charlie Kaufman as well.
Mm-hmm. When I saw that was Charlie Kaufman, I was like, "Oh, that figures."
Yeah. So I've realized that I'm definitely a fan of his writing style. And with that being said, this movie is one of the ones that 2 decades ago solidified that I love what he does. So of course, to give this a verdict, I do have to give this one a very solid yes. I think that it is. As I said, just incredibly well done. I think that it's all around has great performances and is executed very, very well, and also is just incredibly interesting and unique. Where do you land on this one?
Yeah, it's funny because I think that unique is or groundbreaking is like an overused term. It should go like in the swear jar for like movies or movie reviews. But in this case, I think
unprecedented.
Oh God! But in this case, I think you're using the term really accurately. I mean, I agree. This movie is really cool in that Charlie makes fun of movies. He makes fun of movie making. He makes fun of himself. He makes fun of the people involved in making films. He makes fun of the idea of making an adaptation from a book in general, but there's also a degree of seriousness to it. There's a degree of self-reflection. There's a degree of introspection to the movie, and so much of it is fucking hilarious. There's like fourth wall breaks and eighth wall breaks and 16th wall breaks and 64th wall breaks. Like there's all kinds of wall breaks bigger than the fourth wall that I didn't know existed that occur in this movie, and it seems like a stupid idea. It really, really does. But dude, if they ever did it, great. I mean, even involving John Malkovich and some of the cast from John Malkovich and like all of that shit was fucking great. So for
Kathy
me,
Keener is in my house right now.
That was a funny line too. But for me, this one, yeah, it's a definite yes, for sure. Even if you don't like kind of weird movies, I think you'll find something in this film that you'll enjoy.
This may be like the gateway drug to weird movies. because I think this one is like accessible enough that someone who isn't really into weirder stuff could like this movie, and it could be like this and Eternal Sunshine. I think are kind of along those same lines, but yeah. Huh?
Yeah,
So
there's
oh, go ahead.
There's a point where, and there's a spot in my notes that it's a thing that happens in the film, and it's a thing that I kind of wrote down, a thought that I had that I'd like to circle back and actually talk about Eternal Sunshine. So at some point I'll bring that bit up again, and we can chat about that movie too.
Yeah. Well, not that this is a movie you really could easily spoil, but we will. Yeah, let's bring spoiler Terry out now and get into some deeper conversation about it. So Terry. When did you first see this movie? Did you see it when it first came out, or when do you remember?
Here's the thing. I don't know if you can relate to this, but I'm at the point where I've seen so many movies that I'm not sure sometimes what I have and haven't seen.
Well, for me, I will before watching it, I couldn't tell you if I've seen it or not, maybe, but then while watching it, something will I normally cannot watch a movie without something jogging my memory and be like, oh, I have seen this before.
Well, there was a point that I got to where I was like, I have not seen this movie before.
Okay.
I remember Nick Cage. I remember him having a twin. I think that I started this movie on Stars or HBO or some shit way back. And I think I only watched a part of it because I could remember some of the things about the film and enough to where I thought that I'd seen it. But once I got to the point, I guess it was really right after the lunch scene with the movie person where he actually meets with the producer, I guess, played by Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
After about that part, I was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know that I've seen the rest of this movie. So now that I've watched it, I realize I've never seen the film all the way through.
Okay. See,
so this is the first entire watch for me.
I was kind of in a similar boat where I know I have seen this before. I remember 2 decades ago, probably young Ty saw this and enjoyed it. And I honestly remember it shaping ways that I think about the world, even as silly as it is, that that is kind of stupid to say, but and I love that I love that my burp happened right after that too, so I had to actually pause on that thought without being able. But no, just as far as the way he's constantly questioning where did that come from, and it's this line of thought going back to the beginning of the universe, the beginning of life with so many things, and it's this that has been a constant thought of mine for decades, and I feel like it was 15-year-old Ty watching that movie and that kind of planting those seeds a little bit. But I do had a similar experience watching it, this time really paying attention, trying to dissect and analyze the movie, that I realized there was so much of it that I did not even remember or misremembered. I had thought that the two Nick Cage characters were more of a split personality thing. I'd had completely misremembered that he was supposed to just have a twin brother. I thought that he was actually talking to another version of himself in the version of the movie that I remembered. So even though I had seen it, it had been so long that the movie that I thought I had seen was not at all what I watched this week. But I was incredibly pleasantly surprised though. I loved this.
Yeah, I thought that I had. I think I've just seen Fight Club too many times.
Yeah.
And I'm about to spoil that, so pause this for just a second, or fast forward past this part if you haven't seen Fight Club. But I was kind of expecting it to end up he's not real.
Yeah.
But then he starts interacting with people in the film in a way that he can't be explained using Fight Club logic. So I was like, oh, okay, no, he's real. He is real. or the 3 logic. I love Charlie questioning Donald about that script where it's so logically in the movie, when all of these characters are the same person and one of them is locked in the basement and one of them is working in the what's going on? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, never mind. You're right. It's genius. I love those scenes so much that you're talking about. It is it's Charlie Kaufman just kind of poking fun at, movie writing, at all of that in general, that it is and it is so funny that I love that Donald's script was successful, that all he is doing is kind of trying to stick to almost a formula, trying to be as cookie cutter as possible, and then he ends up having
smashing success with it, while Charlie is just, floundering to finish his script, and he wants to be, super artsy. And yeah.
And now that we're here, because this is kind of the spot that I was sort of wanting to get to in the conversation. There is this kind of thing that we do, like, let me see, where is it in here? Because I wrote it down.
Something we do or something humans do? What is the royal we?
People that like movies and like different types of art, I guess. Here we go. I seriously had to Control F and search my own notes to find something. That's how much I wrote down for this film.
Oh, wow.
So it's the idea of turning your nose up at art that isn't artsy enough.
Yeah.
That, you look at someone that wants to kind of turn their nose up at a pop singer just because it's pop music, or that they don't like a rapper just because that rapper is popular. And it's funny because there are occasions, like, because I'm guilty of that, as for a long time, like, I was guilty of, like, all the gatekeeping shit, like, especially with, like, aggressive music, like, oh, that's not real metal. And then I just kind of got to the point where it's like, who cares? Actually, there's a guy, I forget his name. He's a stand-up comic and actor. He was in that's Sarah Silverman show, but he has a joke song called "I'm More Metal Than You."
Okay.
Where he kind of like pokes fun
are you talking about Brian Posehn?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's because it's one of those names, like, where, like, I couldn't remember it, but if I heard it. So yeah, him.
I've never seen that, but as soon as I could just picture him making that song. Like, as soon as you said that was the title, I was like, okay, I know who you're talking about.
It's really funny. But it's just this whole idea of, like, turning your nose up at things because they're, like, not artsy enough. One of my favorite movies is Biker Boys. And Biker Boys is the same plot line as You Got Served, as Drumline, as The Mighty Ducks, as I mean, you name it. It's
Remember the Titans, all the
yeah, Stomp the Yard.
But so there is a fair criticism there, and I think that what it comes down to is, if someone's disliking something simply because it's popular, that's bullshit. That's completely stupid. But if the soul of the artist is not in it because they're only doing it as a business, then I can completely understand why people sometimes don't like stuff. Like, I don't think that it's like that always happens, but it definitely happens where, people realize, oh, I can make money by making this type of art, even though that's not what they have a passion for making. And even if they're successful, you can tell that their soul's not really in it. That's different than just like what you're talking about. But
And the interesting thing too is that you look at movies that are kind of cookie cutter, like movie events, like the Fast and the Furious films.
Sure.
The ones that Paul Walker was in, I truly believe that he was putting his soul into the art. I really, really think that.
Okay.
And even when I talk about, like, Dwayne Johnson, like, I talk about the movies that he's in as being movies that if I don't feel like thinking too hard, I just want to kind of watch something action-packed or whatever. I think that him as a performer, maybe not necessarily the other creators in the film, but him as a performer, I think he really does put his soul, and it comes through in the art when he does it.
Yep.
And those are the breakneck action films, like, buff guy jumps out of helicopter kind of shit.
Yes. But compare that to, like, 2010 Steven Seagal movies, where you can see that he's obviously phoning it in, and like that's where I can completely see the criticism of, like, the person's soul isn't in it. They just need a paycheck, and that that happens. Not that 2010 Steven Seagal movies were very popular. I don't know if that was the best analogy I could have made there, but
I mean, but even, like, there's a few, well, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm a huge fan of his. There's some films where you can just tell he wasn't in it.
Yeah.
There's several where you can 100% tell he is.
Yep.
Predator, I think, is one of them. Like, that was all him. That was everybody that was in the film.
100%.
Like Jesse Ventura, like, everyone was, like, all in that one, I thought. But it's funny because me being someone who's had this whole thing about film and particularly music, like, wanting to, like, turn my nose up because it's not artsy enough or whatever, like, I actually don't like Eternal Sunshine because it is too artsy, in my opinion. It's too artsy. I went from not artsy enough to too artsy.
Interesting. And
the thing is that it's it's a good movie that I don't like.
Yeah.
And I recognize it's a good film. Most of the things about it are great. I mean, what Kirsten Dunst was in it, Elijah Wood, Jim Carrey, of course, Kate Winslet.
Yeah,
I mean,
Kate
like,
Winslet was great in it. Yeah.
there's some legit performance, and the camera work is great. They have some of the coolest scenes that are shot so well.
Kate Winslet's hair did a lot of work in that movie.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of batteries it took. Like, yeah, but there's just something about Eternal Sunshine that for me, and the reason why it's relevant is because it is a Charlie Kaufman film,
so I had to add Synecdoche, New York to the list for next year because I realized I've never seen that, and realizing that I'm a Charlie Kaufman fan, I was like, okay, we have to do that movie. I don't know if you've ever heard or seen anything about that. But I never saw it, so I want to do that. But now I'm making a point to add Inception and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind to next year because we're gonna argue about both of those movies, so it'll be fun. But
because the funny thing about Eternal Sunshine you'll find is that you will see that you and I agree on a whole lot of stuff.
Probably.
But the thing that will probably drive you nuts is that I still don't like it.
I feel like Inception will probably be the same way. I don't feel like a lot of the stuff, like the I don't want to use their data because that's kind of a weird word to use, but I feel like a lot of the points we're not really going to disagree on. It's just going to come down to but I still don't like it.
Yeah, I mean
I just may frustrate you by agreeing and being like, yeah, but I still like it. It could be the other way around.
That's entirely possible. We'll probably just frustrate each other. It'll be quality content though.
People love frustration. That is true.
Hmm? Apparently I have a line in my notes that in all caps says, childbirth, !
There was a very up close shot of childbirth that, was unexpected. Like, I do think that is something like, I don't, what is the movie rated and for what? Because it is like, I wouldn't consider that scene like nudity or anything, but it was like, it's striking to see. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if you would see that in a 2021 movie necessarily. Like, I don't feel like that would be.
I believe, I want to say it's R-rated. Let me see.
It has to be. And even if it says
nudity.
Yeah, but there's Judy Greer's boobies. I forgot about Judy Greer. Yeah, so either way, it's gonna say for nudity, but yeah, so it wouldn't just be for that scene, but
yeah. So so we'll never know if that scene had anything to do with it.
Either way, interesting editing choice. There was a lot of weird editing, the fox decomposing and all sorts of the editing shots were cool. The end of the movie with the long time lapse of the flowers over the course of that scene, I think that shot was really weeks. Cool. Yeah, that's a really cool shot. Yeah.
Man, I was eating at the beginning of that movie, and when the decomposing fox came up, I was like, oh God, it was bad. I was like, I should have eaten before this. But I do like that the movie just gets after it from the very beginning. You hear this fast talking anxiety, like arrival fallacy. When I do this, I'll be happy. Existential dread. Then the primordial shit happens. It's like, and then you've got some hypochondria going on and overthinking and maybe I need to do this. Maybe there's something wrong with that. Maybe I'm depressed. Maybe this needs to be fixed. Maybe I need to take this. Maybe my brain chemistry is imbalanced, and it's like it does, that part does such a good job of showing you overthinking, anxiety, racing mind stuff.
Well, I think what's amazing about that part is it's so real because we were just talking about with putting your soul into it, that's Charlie putting himself into his writing. He is and that's what makes art good, is when it is the artist really putting themselves into it.
And to so many of us, it's not only him being honest about himself and putting himself into it, but also relatable for many people.
Yep.
And I'm someone that's I have conquered most of the anxiety problems that I've had in my life. I've gotten over most of that. I'm pretty much on the other side of a lot of it, but I know how that stuff feels. I get it. And all these things, it's one time, we were in 7th grade, and there was a guy that I was pretty good friends with named John. You might actually remember him. And John was talking about how he said it's really weird when you're on the school bus looking at your shoes and wondering if the people next to you are going to think your shoes look dumb, because those people are looking at their shoes and thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're not even worried. They're just afraid that you're going to have a problem with,
Yep.
whatever and however.
I've thought the same thing about going to the gym, where it's like so many people are like so worried about like, oh, am I going to look stupid or something? It's like everyone else is either like they're either worried about what they're doing because they're confident in what they're doing because they've been doing it long enough, or they're just as insecure as you because they're new and they're focusing on what they're doing because they're like either way, no one's paying attention to like
and it's cool that he put some of himself into the character of himself, and but also I think a good kind of autobiographical screenwriter understands how boring their own life actually is.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
So he adds some things to make it interesting, especially with it's interesting because you put Donald in there as his brother that he doesn't actually have, that he has in the movie, to sort of give some action, something happening external to be on camera, but they're still voiceovers.
I think there's also now I want to, this is like, I was kind of bringing up leading into this episode that I don't feel like I've done enough preparation for this. And I don't feel like I'm going to do the art enough justice because of like not, having the Charlie Kaufman feeling of like, oh shit, I need to do more. But like, I would love to see him talk more about his process for this movie, what he was going through and everything. Cause I'm wondering if the Donald character was a way of externalizing what he had going on internally. Like he kind of put like a lot of the debate he was having with himself as this other character in the movie.
That's a fair point.
At least that's the impression that I get, but it's not something that I've heard him necessarily speak about, so I'm not sure. But
I almost feel like maybe he was doing it because he was trying to reduce the amount of voiceover that would have to occur in the film.
Yeah, well, I mean that, and even just like possibly dealing with the struggle of that whole like that selling out mentality of like, okay, does he, try to go to a formulaic approach and just finish this script like Donald would do, or does he try to stick, true to what he feels like his art is? And yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's the impression that I got, was that it was like a way to take like his debate and put it into an external character.
I mean, I'm sure you know the age-old statement: the book is way better than the movie.
Well, but the book adaptation doesn't exist though.
Right.
Yeah.
So after watching this movie and understanding what happens when you try miserably and painstakingly to turn something unadaptable into an adaptation for film, I think that when someone tells me the book is way better than the movie, I'm just going to say they're two different formats. Like you can't compare them. Like you really just shouldn't. They're two separate things, and regard them as such.
Yeah, you can't. Can you read any book in 2 hours? You know what I mean? Like just pacing is going to be vastly different. A book experience is just, even if it's the exact same story, it's just going to be, like what takes 1 second to show you on screen takes, a half a page to describe to you in a book. It's a very different medium. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that in many cases, when people say the book is better than the movie, like they just are basically saying it's not how I imagined it. And when they see something that's different than what they imagined, it's someone else's vision of the book that they just, part of it is that they can't reconcile that the other person's idea of the film is not exactly like theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I just isn't, because we're talking about Donald as like maybe some stuff he was thinking about during the film, like things that were happening internally.
Possibly.
But Donald is like that. He's like that kind of idiot character that the whole audience thinks is just a moron. And he's like written that way and sort of made to look that way to the audience.
Somewhat, yeah.
that
Well, like he even says when Donald reads the script, he's like, the script kind of makes fun of me, right? And he's like, no, don't worry, I think it's funny. Like, yeah. So yeah, a little bit.
and it's weird because there's actually a guy that on YouTube, I watched a little bit of it. It's a movie essay about making a movie essay about a movie that's about writing a screenplay. Or like about a screenplay that's about writing a screenplay.
That sounds right up our alley. Yeah.
The dude actually does a video like that, where he does a video about making a video essay about the movie, and then he puts himself in there as his twin brother.
That's funny.
It's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, that's clever.
The thing that I think is really cool is that there's some things that I think you have to have a passion for to make fun of.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good example of someone doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But there is one thing that I wanted to kind of compare notes with you on.
Real quick, before we get off Donald, that was an awkward sentence, but
hey.
I'm into it though. Before we get Donald off is what I meant to say. But no, I was like, so he is kind of like the idiot, but I think he's like the lovable idiot because he is very basically innocent the entire movie. He doesn't do anything like he just kind of, and even like all of those, there's so many scenes where he's trying to do something positive and Charlie is just being this kind of over cynical asshole, and Donald's even like, oh, I'm sorry, like the scene where like Charlie pitches him a joke idea for his killer and Donald's like, oh, I kind of like that, and Charlie's like, I was joking, like, oh, I'm sorry, you got me. It's like, it's like I love that mentality because it is kind of like he's lovable the entire time. I think Donald is like, yeah, he's kind of stupid in some scenes, but okay, I was kind of like cringing at the there was one scene where he was talking about like going home with his girlfriend and he was like, a little push in the bush or something, like, and that was like a really cringy. I was like, Donald, I liked you a lot, like, but
it's like, and then you just did that there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing where at the end of the film, just kind of skipping over to that, where he says the thing about also, did you notice that the person that was making fun of him, did you notice that it was when they were in high school, did you notice that her name was Sarah Marshall?
It was Sarah Marsh. I rewound it 3 times because I was gonna point that out, but yeah, it ended up it was just Sarah Marsh.
It was Marsh
because I was gonna be like, dude, is this in the same universe as both Get Him to the Greek and Sarah Marshall? Like, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm kind of disappointed now. I should have paid more attention to that part. The part there where
which, by the way, that's probably one of my favorite comedies ever. Forgetting Sarah Marshall is I love that fucking movie.
But when they're talking about that girl and Charlie says she thought you were pathetic, and then Don says that was her business, not mine.
Yep.
That's a lot of the thing that's cool about the character of Donald is that he is unashamedly himself. And if anybody has a problem with these things, well, that's something for them to deal with, not him.
And you know what? This was one of my favorite lines, but let's go ahead and talk about it now instead. I'll use a different favorite line later. But yeah, what he says right afterwards, you are what you love, not what loves you. And like that's something I decided a long time ago. Yeah, I love that idea. I think that line was amazing. And yeah, just great writing, and then like a really powerful moment and an awesome idea that I think this is the kind of stuff that we want to touch on with this idea of like, what can you take away from a movie and grow personally with. And it's like little nuggets like that I think are really cool.
For sure. And that's a line too where there's a lot of different ways and angles you can take it, and things that you can either that will occur to you or that you can decide to take away from it. And for me, a lot of it is when people with low self-esteem, or I don't like the word self-esteem, when people value themselves little, they many times will look to be cared about or be loved or be worthy of love by somebody else as an indication of their value.
Yeah.
And I think that he kind of that line touches on that idea just a little bit, that it doesn't, you're not really what you love, you're not really who loves you, but you can be what you love, and whatever you choose to love about life or about any aspect of living. I think that tells more about who you are than the people that love you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. And also I think you're touching on from the like almost like normative or prescriptive side, it's like simply by being more loving, you can possibly end up feeling happier and feeling better about yourself. Like, it's like if you just change the love that you're giving out,
If you want to have a friend, be a friend.
That's a dude. You should copyright that. That's a good one.
I'm gonna put on a poster with a chimpanzee sharing a banana with another chimpanzee. That's what I'm gonna do.
That would be kind of cool.
It's gonna be mine. Yeah, that'll be mine. And the thing that there's so much about this film that's really cool. So, bro,
it really is. What
can we?
Oh, no.
LaRoche, man. Can we talk about John LaRoche?
I love that character. I thought he was great. Not only great because of the flaws, great as a character. Do you agree?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the thing that I think is interesting about him, and this is something that we were talking about the other day, that was me and the lady friend.
Mm-hmm.
It was about forefathers. I think John Adams in particular.
Okay.
There's this thing that happens where it's common, and it's sort of a symptom of black and white thinking, that because the people that penned the words that we hold these rights to be, you know what, I'm actually going to hold these truths right. I'm actually going to look it up and quote it because I don't have the Declaration of Independence memorized, and I don't want to butcher it.
So we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Yeah, and then they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to see blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's the only part that really matters. But the fact that this person had slaves, and not only had them, but I think by definition you would say probably sexually assaulted some of those slaves, that everything about the Declaration of Independence is complete horseshit because some of the people that wrote it did bad things.
Yeah, no.
But something good can come from someone who's shitty.
Yeah.
And people are much more complex than the mistakes that they make and the bad things that they've done. And
I mean, but it is fair to point out the hypocrisy that, like, while writing but it doesn't mean that all of it is null and void, and that everything they did was, but it is it's completely fair to criticize.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this because you got two sides to look at it. This person is more than these words because of these actions.
Yeah.
But this person is more than these actions because of these words. And there's these two things. Who's the one? I don't know who said it, but it's the idea that we want to believe that there's some group of evil people somewhere, that if only we could get rid of them, there'd be no evil left in the world.
Yeah.
But evil is a line that bisects every living human.
Yep.
And that it's interesting because nothing about good and evil are mutually exclusive in the same human.
Yes. Well, and like we've touched on before, that it's like what is really going on is a lot of people are acting in what they feel is their best interest, and when people disagree, you see their actions as evil because they are doing something that you don't understand necessarily. Like, there's no one that's, excuse me, I shouldn't say no one. It is very, very rare for there to be people out there that are literally acting in just a malicious way for the sake of being malicious. Like, that is not how humans normally act. It's just not, like, doesn't happen in large numbers very often.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can, but rare.
Mm-hmm.
That's just to give a really intense example, but the way that they show LaRoche at the beginning of the film is he kind of sucks. And the point where I think the things kind of turned around for me is when you see everybody at that kind of get together sort of making fun of him.
Yes.
And then she kind of goes to the restroom and doing the whole ha ha. Then she suddenly has this moment where she's in front of the mirror and very melancholy.
Yep.
And then there's the voiceover of the narration in the book about what it means to really feel passionate about something, that she's never actually had that. And
what I think is really interesting about LaRoche is the change that you're talking about that we see. It's it's not even really character development. We're just seeing him through different light. He hasn't really changed. It's like I think that's what's done in a really interesting way.
Yeah, you're hearing some more about him, like that instead of like, because the way I read the scene in the car where he's like, oh yeah, my wife left me, bitch. I'm thinking, oh, whatever, bro. You're just saying that stuff because you're not willing to take responsibility for your part of the relationship because you're a fucking narcissist with delusions of grandeur and think you know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, there's something that I actually kind of wrote down that I think is an important thing to say. Because when you hear the story about his teeth, that they fell out because he screwed up and killed his mother and his uncle, I guess.
Well,
and also,
they don't tell us; they show us.
Yeah,
we don't hear the story; we see it. Yeah, that was a really powerful scene too. Yeah.
And then he tells her on the phone as he's talking to her. And the thing that I was thinking about that was, maybe don't make fun of people until you know the full story, or maybe don't ever, because you won't ever know the full story.
True. Yeah.
And then I had the thought, like, isn't a lot of stand-up comedy making fun of things that you don't understand?
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you understand the thing that they're making fun of, it's actually not that funny to you.
Normally, yeah.
It depends
Unless,
on the thing.
there's a lot of things where it's like, you can have a full understanding and still laugh at the silly sides of it, which that is fair. But yeah, a lot of times it is like, what's the deal with this thing that I don't understand? That's my guess that impression.
Robin Williams.
Nailed it. What's the deal with airline food? That's Robin Williams. Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld on his show Seinfeld, starring Jerry Seinfeld.
Dude, actually, speaking of have you watched any of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee? You like that show, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I've seen a bit of it. I do like it. The episode with Jim Carrey was interesting since he's in. I have him on my mind because of this.
He is an interesting guy. Yeah.
But there's also this thing like where the talk of when she's saying, I don't know if this is a direct quote from the film, but when Susan is saying the dream of something that you're unable to reach, that it's always a wonderful dream until you've actually reached it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's like all the things that Charlie says will make him happy if he does or gets. And then, once he's there will always be something else. And this is silly, but there is one particular pair of shoes. They're the Kobe Bryant 9 Elite high tops made by Nike. And there's one specific color of them that I still can't find. And I've been looking for them all over the place. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I have so much fun looking for that pair of shoes in that color in my size that I hope I never find them.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah. It's what's the Joker line from The Dark Knight where he's talking about like he's like a
dog chasing cars. He wouldn't know what to do if he ever caught one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean it's kind of a different mentality, but it's still the same point that it's like a lot of times the chase is way better than actually just ending up with it. Which I think that's kind of mirrored in LaRoche's constant changing of interest, where he gets into this thing, he gets deep into this thing, and then it's on to the next thing, because like nothing is ever actually going to just scratch that itch. Basically, I kind of hate that I keep coming back to that term and phrase, but.
Well, and I think that this is something that I think you and I have in common. I do the same shit he does. Like I get into a thing and like that's my thing for a while.
Yep.
And then like I can't imagine being into the thing again.
Yep. Well, I think a lot of times, if you're like me, it happens where from the outside it may seem like there's this infinite level of depth there. And that, once I get into that, there's so much that I can learn and explore, and it's going to be great. And then you get into it and you realize that it's like, oh shit, like I've scratched the surface, but there's not actually that much here. Like not that you've become some expert in this field, but it's just that like, if I were to spend the amount of time to become this, like literally put, I hate the term, but expert, it's like, I'm not even going to find that rewarding because I'm seeing now on the inside what this has to offer, what all there is here.
Yeah, it's not that maybe not the type of depth that you're looking for. Like
Yeah.
a golf swing, for instance, the principles for a good golf swing are exactly the same, and there's not much to them. But you spend all this time tweaking those principles to get to where those principles are followed as closely as possible. But it really and truly is pretty damn simple.
Yeah.
There's really not much to it. And I think the complexity there would just be more than that. Like, is this really all there is to it?
Yep. And I think if you discover that the whole, like, going back to passion, if you discover that you don't truly love golf, then you're going to discover that it's not worth all that effort onto those minute details. That it's like, there's the benefit is not going to be worth the cost to you.
Yeah. Oh crap! I had a thought about that, and now I completely lost it.
I'm sorry.
Oh crap! That sucks.
I didn't want to change off that sub yet.
But have you there is something that oh crap! It's man. I thought it was an interesting thought too, but apparently it wasn't interesting enough for me to remember it. Crap. Whatever.
Or too interesting. It could just be too interesting to remember. Yeah.
So interesting that my mind just went like that's it. Like I cannot keep that.
Your mind is subconsciously protecting itself from itself because it knows that the idea may actually just be too interesting. So it's like it's the emergency shut off switch. It's like no, we can't do that.
I like the way you rationalize me.
I'm just correct.
There's one thing that I just need to say. I need to get this out of the way. It's one little thing, and then we can move on to whatever else you want to talk about. But the scene where he's with I forget the guy's name, the author, like coach guy.
Robert McKee.
Yeah, when he's with him and he says, "Wow them in the end."
Yeah.
I hate Inception. Okay, we're done. That's all I have to say about that. We can move on.
That is kind of the wild them in the end idea, but yeah. Well, it is. I mean, so Inception. He is like the formulaic writer, right? And I would say that a fair criticism of Nolan's films like that are they do kind of follow a similar line. So like, is that the point you're making, that it's like that ending is not only expected, but you also just dislike that kind of ending?
Yep. It's exactly what you think is going to happen in a way that you don't exactly think of as the normal way. But then that's the thing, is it's just exactly what you think was going to happen. Yeah. But not exactly it's just like, I don't know. It's like,
that is a fair point. When you try to have like almost like a twist or surprise that it's like, obviously where it feels like things are going, then yeah.
The ending of Inception to me is like the phrase "expect the unexpected."
Okay, yeah.
That's kind of like that's what the end of that film. I could sum it up in one like common saying. There is something really weird that happened in the movie.
Just one thing?
Well, for me, like not in the while watching the movie, I had something weird happen.
Okay.
He says the thing about, oh my God, it's right when, yeah. So the scene with the tape recorder, and then he's like typing out in the script, repeating what he said as in the script.
Yes.
And I was like, man, this is like an Ouroboros kind of scene. And then Don comes in there and says, Caroline has this tattoo, like, I'm going to make the people eat, when he cuts them up into pieces, he makes them eat themselves. And Caroline has a tattoo of a snake swallowing with its own tail. It's just, it's really cool. Like,
I think it's Ouroboros. I don't know what that word means.
I was like, oh, that's fucking weird.
That is weird.
I was thinking that, but I mean, obviously, like Charlie Kaufman did that on purpose. He wrote it that way on purpose. And I love the part where he even talks about how dumb Donald's idea is to have multiple personalities. He's like, multiple personalities is such a cliche in movies, and it's so dumb. And I'm like, but you're talking to your twin brother that you made up.
Yep.
And that's the thing that I love about like how he makes fun of himself, that no matter how much you want to think you're like avant-garde and outside of the formula, that you really can't operate outside of it.
Yep. And
it's the same with music.
We're all hypocrites too. Like I love that he like points out too, that it's like, it's like it's the do as I say, not as I do because he could sit there and say over and over again that, oh yeah, voiceover, shouldn't be used, or this or this or this, and then, but I still have to do it.
And dude, I think I scared my neighbors. The scene where he's in that little like workshop in the middle of a voiceover, and he's like, "And God help you if you use voiceover in your work, my friends." Like I cackled at that shit. That shit was fantastic.
Great. Yeah, yeah, dude, we've had like 2 weeks in a row really, really enjoyable movies. Like I feel like next week, like it's either gonna be another great one or a huge disappointment, because it's like the past two I've really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, me too, man. And I'm leaving it up to randomness is a little unnerving. I'm curious to see like what
that's you, God,
what we end up with.
God, give us a good one. Should we pray before? What if we say a little prayer before we spin the wheel?
I mean, yeah, I would be fine with praying to the noodly appendage to touch the.
No, you play to RN Jesus.
To who?
Yeah. Well, so the term in like gaming or in computers, like RNG, random number generator. So there's like an entity RN Jesus
RN
because
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. That there's no real randomness in the computer.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a thought that I kind of had with the fact that he essentially documented kind of in some way his own struggle of writing a script. Why do so many of the best books make such bad movies? Why do they need to be changed or embellished? What is it about the art form that makes something a great book but a shit movie?
I think we touched on it earlier, really, where it's like because it's such a different medium. The pacing is completely different. The way, like, if you think of the best reading experience you've had, it is not at all in any way similar to the best movie watching experience you've had. Even though they're both stories, you are being told a story. They are just the way you consume the media is completely different. I think the way, like the pathways in your brain that get activated is probably completely different. I mean, there's a reason why reading is valued. Sitting and the conscious like effort of reading, it's like if that was on the same level as watching movies, I think that like our society would probably be very different.
That is very true.
So it is like, I think it is just, it comes down to the nature of the medium, that it's so completely different that sure it's not mutually exclusive though. There are definitely stories that are great books that also made great movies. I don't think that's impossible, but it is like, it's not, and I do think you touched on it. It has to be changed. You cannot tell the same story as a great movie. If you do, it has to be like, a series basically, right? Like a trilogy, even Lord of the Rings, like even that, like that was a great book that made 3 great movies, but even that they had to change quite a bit to make it fit, to make things make sense for that medium. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, like I was working with someone actually at Blockbuster, with my boss at Blockbuster, who had read the Harry Potter books and was reading some of them again, like kind of as the films came out. And he told me, I forget which one it was, but there was a lot of melancholy and like darkness in the narrative voice of Harry Potter. Like the things that he was like kind of writing in his journal, that there's a really deep degree of loneliness that you felt in the film that felt in the book that you never got in the film because there just wasn't enough time.
Yeah, exactly.
Put all of the sort of like doom and gloom and dread into it.
Yep.
But like I just for me, I really dislike fiction. I'm not a big fiction reader. Most of the things that I read are like either like memoirs, like self-improvement, like science stuff, philosophy stuff. Like I'm not really into fiction. So I'm glad movies exist, because I'd be a really boring person if all we talked about was books.
Well, I was not really a big fiction reader until I made myself over the past few years kind of go back and revisit more like classic literature. But it's still like, I'm still not a huge fiction reader. Like I'm not going to, pick up the newest, fiction off the shelf and read, or like Tom Clancy and stuff like that. Like that doesn't really interest me. But there is something really cool to like, in my mind, a doorway into some of the great minds. Like it to me, it's like, like when I read, like Jules Verne or stuff like that, it's like, it's less about the story and kind of more about like what this person came up with. That's what's kind of cool about, like, great fiction like that to me. But, like, that's very different than Twilight. I'm not, or stuff like that.
That's like, there's a funny, he calls it spoken word, but Henry Rollins does these performances where he basically just gets in front of a crowd of people and bitches about things, and it's funny.
Yes.
He has one bit about what book are you reading right now, or like he's like, oh yeah, I know, it's a lame question. What CD's in your CD player right now? And like, so I ask it, and it's like, I've been reading the Harry Potter series. Get out of my car. That for him, that's just like unacceptable reading, I guess. But to be fair, it's not any different than any other shit that Charlie has to say about some of the way that Hollywood stuff gets going in films.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you listen to the things he doesn't want to do in the screenplay, he basically just doesn't want to write a movie.
Yes.
Is what he's saying.
Yes.
And
he wants to experiment with the medium. He wants to see if he can make a movie that feels more like a book like that, I guess. Or I guess like he tries to ask McKee, he's not necessarily saying he wants it to feel like a book. He's saying that he wants it to reflect the real world, quote unquote, where there isn't a constructed narrative and people go through these predictable changes or like character arcs and things like that. But
it's that life imitating art or art imitating life thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really funny when McKee actually comes out and like just rips him a new one about what the hell what world do you live in? Because the what? What do you mean nothing happens? And a lot of it, I think, just means like you're not looking hard enough, or you're choosing to ignore.
Yes. Yeah.
What exists in the world, if that's really what you think.
Well, and and that's what Charlie responded to McKee, like when he approached him after the seminar, that he was like, he's what you said to me is like that. How did he say it? He was like, it was more than my writing. He's like, that it had to deal with how he's like, it shook me to the core. It had to deal with how I experienced the world. Or like, I forget exactly how he said it, but it was, it's more than like, he realized that yes, he was living life in a way that was limiting his experience and limiting his perception of the world, really. Which I think that's another, like, if we're talking about takeaways from this movie that you can apply to yourself, that it's like, I mean, I think that is a big lesson, is that there is life is what you make it. Like, how often can we like boil down our things to like just like these little like phrases that have been popular for forever?
It's like when you see when you see cliches, you understand why they're cliches. Like the reason why this has been said so many times is because there's a more than just a shred of truth in it. Yeah. And man, I not just talking, because I know we already talked about the John LaRoche character, but I really wanted to just talk briefly about, because the clue that I gave you was a movie starring an actor that everyone likes to make fun of, who's actually a really good actor. Mm-hmm. But Nick Cage isn't the only one in here that is. I think that no one makes fun of Chris Cooper, but Chris Cooper is often overlooked, and he does a lot of really, really good work. He's been in lots of really great films.
He was great in this,
Yeah, and not the least of which being American Beauty and many other films.
Oh my, I forgot that was him. Holy shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he plays the dad.
The neighbor,
like
yeah.
Well, the dad, the neighbor, and then Brian Cox, who, I mean, he wasn't in the original X-Men films too? He played who was the guy that started the whole Sentinel program and stuff?
The one that Peter Dinklage ended up playing in the newer movies, right? I forget that character's name. Was that him?
Is it? I cannot remember the character's name.
I don't think that was. Oh, okay. So I am on Brian Cox's filmography, but hold on, let me go ahead and just show how big of an idiot I am here. I am on Brian Cox, the physicist, filmology. So I was like, he apparently, the first thing he was in was in 2005 to 2009. He was in Horizon, This is the episodes have to do with Einstein. Yeah, this isn't right. This isn't right.
The British physicist with the best hair since the Beatles.
Well, in all fairness, hold on. Let take a look at this here. This is why Google failed me. I just Googled Brian Cox. Right here to the right, I see the face that I'm looking for, but the top link is Brian Cox, physicist. That's just my Google foo failing. But
I say we X2 X-Men United. William Stryker.
Thank you. Name. Yes, I could not remember his name. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought he was great in that. I mean, it's a freaking, like that was at the beginning of, I think, people thinking of movies starring superhero type characters as being a legitimate like film.
He was in The Ring too, apparently.
Was he?
It has it on his wiki here. I do not remember him in The Ring. Huh.
I haven't seen that movie in so long. But that dude does great work. He played didn't he play the captain or some shit in Super Troopers? He was fucking brilliant.
Yes, he was. Oh yeah, and the big dog just put in chat. He was also in Irresistible. Yep. Have you ever seen Irresistible? That's a hilarious movie.
Apparently he was in Penny Dreadful too. That was a cool little series.
Yeah, that was.
It got fucking canceled.
Irresistible is a 2020 movie with it's actually written and directed by Jon Stewart, and it stars Steve Carell and actually Chris Cooper is in it. Yeah.
Oh damn.
Yeah. Hold on, and that's who you were talking about. Because there's no way. Okay, I think maybe because of the delay. I think the big dog was talking about Chris Cooper, not because it does not look like he is like. Yeah. Brian Cox is not also in this, but yeah, that okay.
He was in a movie where he played. It was one of those based on a true story films about some people at like the CIA or something.
I don't know if I've seen that.
Breach. That shit is good as fuck, dude. It's got what's his name? I think Ryan Felipe is in it.
Oh, I like him. Yeah.
Dude, that movie is brilliant.
Oh.
And. Dude,
that does look familiar. I don't know if I ever saw that, huh? I might have to
You really should. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it. It came out a long time ago, but Chris Cooper plays that role so well, and it just kind of comes back to what's his name? Oh crap, his last name's Waltz. He was in Inglourious Bastards. He played the one SS guy.
Yeah, I forget his name.
Is it Johann Waltz?
Christopher Waltz.
It's Christoph.
Yeah, Christoph. I'm sorry. Yep. My brain just added the ER into the end because because that's how stupid I am. But
hey man, Anglo names, I'm into it. But yeah, the thing that he says, and I go back to this all the time, is he actually said it in Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, which I don't know why Jerry Seinfeld considered him a comedian, but whatever. He was saying that you just, if you cast a movie well, then the person playing the role will just play the role well. He doesn't necessarily think that he's a great actor. He just thinks he's been cast properly. And I kind of feel that way about like the way that this film was done, that I think that Chris Cooper is the only person that could have actually played the role the way that they wrote it in the movie, because the actual dude's a lot different.
I like how you said the way that they wrote it, the way that Charlie and Donald wrote it. Right.
Yeah, the two twins.
The two of them, yeah.
Definitely.
Which rest in peace, Donald. He did tragically die on set in a car accident. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a terrible accident there, and he didn't actually get to see the premiere. So rest in peace, Donald. This one goes out to you, buddy. A moment of silence.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Because I had this moment where when someone says a moment of silence, like, what, is there a rule for how long those are supposed to be?
I don't know. A lot of times they do actually specify. I've heard that before, where it's like, we will have a 400-second moment of silence for the 400 victims of, like I've heard that, like things like that said, where it's like the length of time has to do with like some event that was going on, the moment of silence was for or whatever. Well, and I mean, there are a lot more things to talk about, definitely. But it's like, in the interest of time, are there any other notes you want to get to before wrapping up?
Yeah, there's one big thing that happens at the end, right after John ends up getting mangled by the. I'm assuming that was an alligator, since they were in Florida, right? He gets mangled by that dude. When she's kind of cradling his body, and they're kind of both sort of he like, and Charlie's sort of there, and she says the thing about, oh, she wants to go back to before everything got fucked up, before her life got fucked up, and she says, I want to be a baby again. I want to be new.
Yeah.
There's something interesting about that, because it implies that her life, that before her life got fucked up, that everything after being a baby was fucked up. And that, I mean, wow.
Well, but it's also, that's just a completely fresh start. You know, it's not that like everything was fucked up, but it's like, if you don't go all the way back to being a baby, you know, like, okay, let's say, you know, thought experiment, this is possible. You go back to 18, you're still on a certain trajectory that you've set for yourself in previous years. You know what I mean? Like, at what point do you, like, it's not like everything has been fucked up, but like, if you do want a new fresh start, you do kind of have to pick, like, you know, respawn as a baby to really like not be on like kind of a set path, or like already on like a set of rails kind of.
That is true. I mean, like, you'd have to start at the point where the before the options ever started to narrow. But it's just like, it's just such an interesting thing for that character to say. Like, I didn't expect that to come out of her mouth at that moment.
Yeah, it was like, to me, I mean, for a movie that I love a lot and love the writing of, it was kind of like an almost like strange line that I don't want to call it cringy, but I was kind of like, there's a cool idea there, that it was like, it felt like it was written in a way that was almost too heavy-handed for me, or not, like, yeah, just, it wasn't, I don't know, it felt like there may have been a better or more subtle way of expressing that idea than just having this character say, I want to be a baby again, unless that was the point of, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't quite George Lucas literal, but it was somewhere on the spectrum. Yeah.
Did you say George Lucas is somewhere on the spectrum? I think you heard it here.
I called Charlie Kaufman's writing somewhere on the spectrum of Lucasdom, of Georginess.
Lucasdom. Well,
yeah, the kingdom of Lucas.
What else? You got anything else? Are you ready for favorite line?
I think. One major idea that I just kind of wanted to say to tie everything together is that the thing that's so cool about this movie is that the meta aspect of it, and the fact that by the end of the film, you see that Charlie wrote this film with all of the things that he didn't want to put in the film.
Yeah.
Because the only way to make this book into a movie was to essentially not make the book into the movie at all. And he even had to put in things that didn't happen, like there was no romance between Orlean and LaRoche. That never happened. There were no drugs.
Allegedly.
There's also no known compound to come out of an orchid of any species that gets you high. And by the end of it,
that's just what they want you to think. Big flower got to you, man. Big flowers
just put big in front of it, and then you can make it a conspiracy. Those reptilian Americans are at it again. But that it's cool to me that he had to. His character learns a lesson that he learned himself in writing the movie about writing the movie.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see the meta aspect of him, quote, selling out to make the movie that he didn't want to make, because that was the only way to make it, because it is a movie.
It has to be a movie,
And that, you know, like the part where the drama just has to happen. You got to have the drama. There has to be the tension. And there was a lot of tension in the swamp scene, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All through that swamp scene at the end. So yeah, it's just funny because he had to write the Don movie at the end.
I do think since you got to that topic, it would be almost unfair not to kind of bring up the question. Sorry, I'm choking on water somehow.
Oh wow, you sound like me.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Oh my God, this episode's gonna be horrible now. It's just it's Distance and his twin brother trying to talk about. No. But no, the so I mean, there are a lot of people that kind of have a criticism of this movie that, or this may be a criticism of Charlie himself, that like, oh, he, you know, so self-indulgent, he had to throw himself into the script, that, you know, like I've heard people say that, and I completely disagree. I think that it is like what he did, I think was interesting. I think what he did, again, like I said earlier, was unique. I think it's cool, and I think that it was just a response to the situation he was in. I don't think that it's I think that it was, you know, like we talked about earlier, he put his soul into it, and he put himself into it, literally.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah. that's how much he poured himself out. Yeah. He poured himself into the movie.
Yeah. I thought it was just at least fair to acknowledge that point that people have brought up, but yeah, I still want to be dismissive of it. But are you ready for favorite line then?
Oh yeah, bro.
Let's do. Okay, so I know that there is no way we picked the same one. Absolutely no way. I want you to go first because mine is difficult. It's going to be tough.
Okay. Well, I'm actually glad that you said the last thing that you said, because this line is something similar to, there's a kind of, I don't know, you call it like a post-metal band called Bring Me the Horizon, who I know you know of, who started out very, very heavy and almost, I guess you call it deathcore or death metal type heavy. And they slowly became something a little more mainstream until they released a full-on pop album called Amo. Mm-hmm. And there's a song on that album called Heavy Metal, yep, where they address the fact that they know what everybody's going to fucking say about this album, that this shit ain't heavy metal. That's one of the things that all the little, like, you know, nose in the air gatekeeper people were going to say. And I love the thing about this line, because Charlie Kaufman does exactly that, exactly what that band did in that song. I've written myself into my screenplay. It's self-indulgent. It's narcissistic. It's solipsistic. It's pathetic. I'm pathetic, and I'm fat and pathetic.
Yeah, it's a good one. That was a good line. Great, and good delivery too, man. Actually, I liked that.
It wasn't Nick Cage good, but whatever.
I mean, how many of us are Nick Cage good, really, when we get down to it? I do think, you know, like, all memes aside, dude is a great actor. Like, he yeah, dude. All right, my favorite line from this. Well, I already talked about it earlier. My honestly favorite line was the "You are what you love, not what loves you," but that came up in conversation naturally. So I'm gonna go to what was my second favorite line. This is gonna be tough though. Oh God. This is my second favorite line because it's delivered really well, and it's just written really well, and it's a great moment, honestly. And it's true. And actually, no, here, the main thing too, reviewing movies, trying to get better at this is something I've wanted to say to some writers and directors too. So being able to say this, I think, will feel really good. The real world? The real fucking world? First of all, you write a screenplay without conflict or crisis, you'll bore your audience to tears. Secondly, nothing happens in the world? Are you out of your fucking mind? People are murdered every day. There's genocide, war, corruption. Every fucking day, somewhere in the world, somebody sacrifices his life to save somebody else. Every fucking day, someone somewhere takes a conscious decision to destroy someone else. People find love. People lose it. For Christ's sake, a child watches a mother beaten to death on the steps of a church. Someone goes hungry. Somebody else betrays his best friend for a woman. If you can't find that stuff in love, if you can't find that stuff in life, then you, my friend, don't know crap about life. And why the fuck are you wasting my 2 precious hours with your movie? I don't have any use for it. I don't have any bloody use for it.
That was a ballsy line to do, man.
And I couldn't pull it off either. Fuck.
The intensity that he delivers that with is damn near undoable.
Yeah,
like,
that's tough.
That's like professional actor chops type of shit. But like, mad respect for that line, because that's hard. The second you started that, I was like, oh fuck. Like, I like that line. I really like that whole like tirade he went on, but I was like, I don't dare pick that. Actually, I think I wrote part of that down in my notes somewhere.
I've chosen like 2 weeks in a row, 2 weeks in a row for the person who can't fucking speak. Yeah, no, 2 weeks in a row, I've definitely chosen some pretty difficult, almost monologue lines. Like even the last week, the De Niro line was not easy either. But
yeah, trying to do the long ones really makes you realize how difficult what actors do actually is, because they fucking memorized that shit.
Yes. Yep.
And it's like, wow. Like, because I think the longest one I've done was the one from either oh god, Edge of Tomorrow. That was pretty long. But it was the thing at the end of Elizabethtown was probably the longest one that I've done.
Yeah.
And I actually practiced that shit.
Yep.
So
yeah, if I would have practiced this, I probably could have not stumbled on a few words. But yeah, I think I gave myself like 2 run-throughs. But
dude, I would have screwed the pooch on that hardcore. I would have overacted and underacted and then overacted again.
Well, are you ready to find out what our fate is for next week? I'm kind of excited.
I'm a little scared, but yeah, let's see.
It's I mean, okay, so we've Distance did agree that we're just gonna spin the wheel again. So we have here all of the movies that are left for the year. So it's gonna be one of these. Let's hold on. I do want to turn on the audio for this because it makes neat noises. Weird. What's up?
My little sister showed up here and I didn't even say hello.
Oh, that was your little sister?
Well, basically, not by blood.
Oh, okay.
Craig's little sister, so it's
gotcha. Okay, I was like, what? You don't have a little sister. That's why I think really confused by that. Is both of your sisters are older, right?
Yes.
I thought so. Okay, yeah. All right. Let's see what next week is. RN Jesus, take the wheel. Okay. Next week we are gonna watch Catfish. Do you know anything about this movie?
I know that the movie is the reason why the term exists for someone pretending to be someone else on the internet. That's all I know about it.
That is true. Okay. And this will be our second foray into a genre. This is the second documentary we've ever done. So it is.
Oh, wait, is that? Oh, this will be interesting.
Do you know anything about this, or?
The only thing that I know is that that's why they call the thing, the catfish thing, that it even exists. I don't know anything else about it other than that.
Okay, but that it is not a fictional story. It is a documentary in something that really did happen. That yes, was the original Catfish, basically.
Yeah. Okay. I'm interested. I mean, anything that follows like events that occurred is actually kind of fun. That makes it easier for us to figure out some things about ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and also I think there is something, I mean, same thing with like The Social Dilemma when we did that, like something about a documentary, it just gives us a lot to talk about because we are actually discussing, things that are occurring in the real world and their actual implications that affect, life and everything. So it's, not that we can't find stuff to talk about with a fictional story, but it is like, to me, it is very interesting, the conversations that we've had with the previous documentary and how we relate it to the real world. So yeah, so I think this will be a lot of fun. So it's 2010 was the year it originally came out. So we're, a decade behind, but still, I think it'll be cool to discuss and cool to look into, and especially if you've never seen it, I think it will be a neat experience then.
I'm stoked.
Cool. Well, guys, that is going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of the Metacast Movie Show. If you are watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the discussion, please hit the like button, subscribe to keep up to date, and comment below and tell us how you felt about Adaptation.
If you want us to write ourselves into our own episode and further keep up to date, or even join us as a guest on a future episode, please join our Discord. The link is in the description below. We will be live next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylerTV. I was like, what comes after Wednesday? Okay.
You nailed it. Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you guys have a great week.